Hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, because now I can hear you guys.
Great, awesome. That's good. So I'm just gonna just a minute. I'm just gonna make you a co-host just so you can also see the chat. In the ending, I think we should go through some questions, and then we can get the questions in the chat, or people can go online and do the questions.
Sounds wonderful.
Yes. So thanks a lot for joining us here, Dr. O'Connor. This is actually, yeah, this is actually a whole new company for me. I have been using CBD products for about a year. I have thought about using CBD for many years, but I didn't know how to get it and if it was illegal and stuff like that. So I've used another brand, and now I have seen and heard a lot of different results with people who actually didn't have so great results with other brands. And so for me, I could see that these products are a bit different. So and I'm totally new into the company. And I also have Christina here, who is the one who started Live Labs up in Denmark. So I would like to hear about also, of course, her experience, and then a lot from you, O'Connor, with all your knowledge about CBD and the endocannabinoid, I can't say it in English, system in the body. So, but I would like to tell you just about what I'm doing, because I am treating I have lots of children with special needs in my clinic. And that's why I wanted to arrange this meeting with you as a doctor and your knowledge about the CBD, because I know that CBD is has a huge impact in our body, and you could for sure tell why and what it's doing in the system in our body. So I have grown-ups with PTSD, trauma. We have made a pilot project in Colorado, actually, where we had 6 veterans. And, you know, so I want to help all these people with neurological or mental disorders, and help them not only by working with the neurology on the horses, but also how can they do other things to benefit the health and the neurological system. So
wonderful. Hopefully we can add some value to all this.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I'm sure you will. But Christina, you were the one starting Live Labs in Denmark, and I was amazed about your husband Andreas's history about a broken spine and the results he has had from the CBD. And I know we don't make any claims here about the cure, treatments, and so on with the CBD, but I think it's very important that we hear the stories from people, how they have had benefited from CBD. So would you like to share your story about CBD and the product we are, the company we are in now?
Of course, I want to do that. Welcome, everyone, and hi, Dr. O'Connor, and thank you for joining us tonight. It's always great to have you with us here. I'm Christina. This is my husband, Andreas, and we have been with Live Labs for 7-8 months now. Almost known about them for a year now, so time flies. But we have been using CBD products for almost 4 years now, and I hear a lot all around the social media. When I talk to people, I always hear, I tried that, but it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, what products did you take, or how long time did you give it? Because when we started using CBD, for me, after 10 days, I had better sleep, and many things were better for me. But for Andreas, who had a lot of issues with arthritis and a broken back, and if I can say, if he was a horse, I don't think he would be here today.
No, well,
He was on a lot of medication and used that since I knew him 25, 27 years ago. After 3 months, he was one of the persons who say, it doesn't work for me. I can't feel anything. And I said, keep on taking this, because what I knew is that everybody needs it. After 6 months, he was still, no, I cannot feel anything. But then we found out that he was down in medication. After 1 year, he was out, totally free from medication and out of pain. And today, it's 3 years since he took his last painkillers.
No, about 2.
Oh, okay, about 2,
Yeah,
but not even like a Panadol like we know here. Nothing
Nothing at all.
is he taking. So if I didn't know that everyone needs CBD, we would have stopped after 3 months maybe. But because we know that we keep taking it, it will help. So when we started Live Labs, we experienced new things, because the products at Live Labs is very more potent, it's stronger, and after 3 years on CBD, we discovered new things. Andreas' psoriasis on his back went away. My cold hives I have had since I was 25, it went away. So definitely some changes happened, but the best of all is that we spend less money on CBD than we did before. And this is what I like, because we can offer this to every family all around the world. And, normally families were thinking about who of us should take CBD because it's too expensive. Here everybody in the family can take it. So this is the story that we have here. And today we will never stop taking CBD. If we could only choose one supplements a day, it would be CBD. So this is our story, and if anybody has any questions, you are always welcome to reach out to me. So I think that we should let the floor be and let Dr. O'Connor speak now.
Yeah. So Dr. O'Connor, our special guest tonight, would you tell us a bit about your story about, I know that you have been a doctor. Was it an ER doctor, emergency doctor, or what? Yeah. So could you tell a bit about that and how you found about the CBD and if you can tell a lot about the endocannabinoid, I can't say the word.
Well,
if you can.
You speak better English than I do, so you're doing great.
But that system, could you tell about how it's affecting the neurological system? And even I heard one of your talks about prenatal. I didn't know that the prenatal could be affected by a depleted system. So please let us know what you know.
Well, I was an emergency room physician for 33 years. So I did everything from deliver babies to set broken bones, trauma care, heart attacks, strokes, you name it. And over 33 years, you got to see an awful lot of things. So what I really learned and I didn't realize what I was ultimately learning, but I was learning that our Western medical system was broken. And in acute care medicine, like emergency medicine, emergency surgery, infectious disease, we do a great job. But for chronic problems, long-term health issues, Western medicine fails miserably. And that that kind of triggered a little bit of a move towards functional medicine, more holistic, more natural type medicines in me. And what triggered my ultimate change to a more healthy way of practicing medicine was my wife had been introduced to some nutritional products and vitamins. And they weren't the typical mass-produced vitamins that most people see. They were a special kind of vitamin, and they were fairly unique. And one of her friends encouraged her to start taking these particular vitamins. And I remember coming home one night from a night shift, and she handed me this piece of paper and she said, "Take a look at these. I'm going to start taking these. Is there anything here that's going to hurt me?" And I looked at it, and my first thought was, oh, what sort of woojie stuff did you get into, and how much is this going to cost me? So I didn't take it very seriously. About 2 weeks after she started, though, her menopausal symptoms had completely changed. And she was a very different person. And that all came with just providing her body with some basic nutritional needs. That got me to thinking that, hey, there's something here. I pride myself on doing a lot of research and study. I jump down that rabbit hole anytime something new comes up and really try to research it. But I found that there was something to natural medicines. And shortly after I went down that path, I started reading some information on medical cannabis and this new thing called CBD. And it wasn't legal in the United States. It wouldn't be legal for about another 3 years. But I started doing quite a bit of research on it and found that it was an amazing system. It was an amazingly broad ranging. It had great impact on the body in all sorts of different systems. And the more that I learned, the more that I became convinced that this was one of the major pillars of health and wellness. And when I say the pillars of health and wellness, I'm talking about, I don't just promote CBD. I promote a healthy lifestyle. So I promote sleep. I promote meditation or stress reduction. I promote healthy eating. I promote supplementation with minerals and good quality vitamins. I kind of represent a world where networking with friends and family, cooking, doing things that are good for yourself, going out and taking walks, exercising, all these things are critical to a health and wellness lifestyle. But critical to all that, the glue that binds all those things together in the body is the endocannabinoid system, the ECS. So you can say ECS and get away with that. So, but that ECS system really holds together and impacts every one of those other things that I mentioned. It's a great source of omega fatty acids, the healthy ones, the omega-3s, with small amounts of the healthy omega-6 and omega-9s. It has impact on your sleep mechanisms. It helps to reduce some of the chaos in your brain by muting down some of the stimuli that gets to your brain. So it helps you to develop a more natural sleep. It works directly on some neurons and nerve bodies that affect your pineal gland, and your pineal gland secretes melatonin, which sets up your cycle for sleep and day and sleep wellness. It helps to allow your muscles to recover when you exercise. So you actually stress your muscles get stressed, your body says, okay, I've been stressed, I need to rebuild these muscles. CBD can act as a cell signaler to help repair those muscles. It can signal to bring certain compounds and chemicals that are necessary for muscle and repair functions to come into the area. And it also acts as a fuel source for fueling repair. So it affects exercise. So nutrition, sleep, exercise. It helps a general sense of well-being in the brain. And when you compare a person who sleeps soundly for 7 to 8 hours, their lifespan is on average 10 years longer than a person who sleeps on average 4 to 5 years. And that's a profound difference. 10 years in a human system, which in the United States right now, our lifespan dropped to right around 70 years old for a man, which is terrible for an industrialized nation that spends over $3.8 trillion on health and healthcare. We're number 37 in the Western world for outcomes. And Haiti, a very impoverished country, has a lifespan that's not too far away from what we have in the United States, which is terrible. So when you look at health, if you can increase your lifespan by 10 years, that can be amazing, especially if those 10 years are healthy. So CBD provides you with the ability to not only get deep sleep, but when you are in deep sleep, you actually start to repair the neurons. CBD is a neuroprotectant. It's a neurostimulator. It stimulates something called NDNF, which is a brain-derived neurofactor, which helps to make your neurons young and healthy. And it also, there's these little cells that help to support your neurons and keep them healthy. And CBD actually stimulates these little cells to act as messengers, to act as maintenance people for your neurons. So it's very specific in what it does in the brain, and it's very essential. And it's probably one of the most critical components of your brain health that's out there. And this is all in the ECS system. The ECS system wasn't really found until the late 90s. And I graduated medical school in 1985. There was no mention of the endocannabinoid system. We didn't even know it existed. By the late 90s, some creative people figured out that these compounds that they found in plants called cannabinoids looked very similar to some unnamed, interpreted molecules that were found in the human body. And they looked at them and they said, wow, these things look similar. I wonder if there's something here. So they started researching, and they found these endocannabinoid receptors on cells, the CB1 and the CB2. Now we know that there's vanillic receptors. There's probably about 8 to 9 different major and minor receptors that we know that are involved with the endocannabinoid system. And they're scattered throughout the entire body. The only cell in the human body that doesn't have an endocannabinoid receptor is the red blood cell. So if you look from a scientific view, from a 30,000-foot view, and you look down on the endocannabinoid system and you see that these receptors are found everywhere in the human body, they must be really, really important. And when we do the research, and the research is still going, you look at PubMed, which is a study clearinghouse here in the United States, you find thousands of articles on CBD and how hemp oil can impact the body, thousands and thousands of studies. So it is blowing up with regard to the information that we know. And you mentioned the perinatal period being so important. The highest concentration of endocannabinoids, which is in your body, you make two major compounds, anandamide and 2-AG, and those are the body's. That's what the body makes to fulfill its endocannabinoid needs, providing everything is well. Well, the human body, the highest concentration of those two compounds is found in breast milk. Now, there's a reason for that, because the endocannabinoid system is essential for neurodevelopment in children. So babies at the age, I think it's like 12 to 16 days, is when they start utilizing the mom's endocannabinoids to help develop the brain. And as a corollary, if you think about this, and I'm hoping that this will come true, but in the United States and probably most of the developed world, they were very adamant about adding folic acid to the diets of women who were thinking about bearing children. And folic acid is a B vitamin, and it's very important for something called neural tube development. So when the baby is growing, the spinal cord gets encased in something called the neurotube, and that's where the nerves all develop. And in babies, they found that were deficient in folic acid. Actually, I should say folate, because folic acid is synthetic and it's dangerous to the body. So remember that. That's a little tidbit. That's over and above the CBD. Folate, methylfolate, is the key vitamin that every woman who is of childbearing should take. Everybody should take folate anyway, methylfolate, but particularly in women. And in the United States, because they found that this particular vitamin was so necessary to healthy development, they made sure that every company that produced a product that was consumed fortified it with folic acid. Like breads and anything that you could buy off the shelf was fortified with folic acid. Now, their idea was good, but their methods were not sound. If they had used methylfolate, we would have seen much better results. And if they added CBD, they would have added even better results, because CBD, even before folate is involved, starts to help that neural tube development, starts to mature the neurologic system, the brain, the spinal cord, the peripheral nerves in the baby. That continues after birth in breastfed women and breastfeeding women and breastfed babies. They get the anandamide and 2-AG from their mother's milk, which then accelerates the neurologic development of babies. And it is a very important function in growth and development of toddlers, infants, children, and even in adults, because we used to think, when I was trained in the 80s, we thought that the nervous system couldn't grow, couldn't repair. It was a static system. Now we know that the nervous system has something called neuroplasticity, which means you can repair your nerves. And it all depends on these glial cells. Well, the glial cells have tons of CB receptors. So when you have a CBD, you take CBD, you're stimulating those receptors on the glial cells to perform all sorts of maintenance functions in the neurologic system. Not only from anxiety, it helps to reduce symptoms of depression, it helps to repair damaged neural tissue, it helps to break down what we call senescent or dying or dead neural tissue. It gets rid of that. It stimulates a lot of different functions in the nervous system. So CBD is critically important in brain health. It's critically important in sleep management, critically important in digestion. Another cool thing, and this is something that I'm very interested in researching, is our microbiome. And are you guys familiar with what a microbiome is? The microbiome is your gut's bacteria. Only 1 out of every 10 cells in your body is your own native DNA. The other 9 are either mitochondrial DNA that you got from your mom, or they're bacterial DNA, viral DNA, or yeast DNA that are growing in your intestinal system. And this bacteria, we are not human beings. We are actually, we are vessels holding unique blue-green bacteria. I mean, 9/10 of our body is the DNA of something else. So we are just a way of holding this blue-green bacteria. And when you look at blue-green bacteria, if you're healthy, people with asthma, people with eczema, people with psoriasis, people with heart disease, people with digestive issues, irritable bowel, people with Alzheimer's, dementia, you name the medical problem, they have an imbalance in the proper bacteria in their gut. So what does CBD do? CBD is actually a direct food source for those bacteria. And it also acts as a cell signaling agent, meaning it helps the blue-green bacteria and the bacteria that we have in our body to communicate with one another and tell each other that we're missing something essential. And so the body will then try to heal that, try to incorporate that nutrition when you consume it. And there used to be an old saying that said, you are what you eat. So if you eat good food, you're going to be healthy. It's not exactly true. You are what you absorb. And what determines what you absorb is this bacteria in your gut. So anything that you can do to promote this good bacteria is going to help your nutritional status, your emotional status. There are 8 times more signals going from the gut to the brain than the brain to the gut. So your gut is telling your brain how to respond. 70% of the serotonin, which is one of your hormones that helps keep you happy, keep you well, 70% of that serotonin is manufactured by the bacteria in your gut and transmitted via your vagus nerve or via other hormone mechanisms to your brain. And just the type of bacteria that you have in your gut can determine whether or not you're anxious or depressed. It can also determine whether or not you're obese or skinny. They've taken rats, and special rats that are prone to be obese, and they took the gut bacteria from those fatter rats, put them into skinny rats. The skinny rats then became fat. They then did the opposite. They took the bacteria from the skinny rats and put it in the fat rats, and the fat rats became skinny. All just because they transplanted bacteria that they had in their gut. That's how powerful these organisms are. And CBD is one of the richest sources of nutrients, the richest sources of cell signaling for these gut bacteria. So it's absolutely essential. There's a reason why we have this endocannabinoid system. And it's not by accident. This is an incredibly powerful system. I argue that it's one of the most important organ systems, hormone systems that we have in our body. And it's critical that we supplement this system and take a proper CBD, something that's pure, something that's rich, something that is very well thought out and produced so that it is not harmful to your body, but it is helpful to your body. And that is why I ended up with Live Labs. That's why I ended up studying CBD. That's why I ultimately became a more natural-based physician.
Wow, that's very interesting. So Dr. O'Connor, could you tell about a bit about children with those special needs? So what could they possibly experience getting the CBD with their hypersensitivity, their anxiety, and so on?
Awesome question. That is really becoming a very important research area of medicine right now. From children who that are on the autism spectrum, hyperactivity spectrum, et cetera, they benefit from CBD in a number of ways. Again, remember I told you that the gut bacteria can impact the brain and it can impact your mental health and wellness. They found in children on the autism spectrum and special needs spectrum that they don't have a proper concentration of the unique gut bacteria that keeps most children healthy. They usually have some form of imbalance. Now, if you can support their system with something that is going to promote that healthy bacteria, and CBD does, and clinically they can show that it does, that is going to help the child repopulate their gut with bacteria that's going to help them absorb the nutrition that they particularly need. Some of it can be mineral deficiency. And by taking in CBD, you increase the cells in the gut to absorb certain minerals. And I'll talk about why dirt is so important. And you guys are going to get a hold of dirt pretty soon. And that's again critical. But children with autism spectrum, they have trouble because they can't discern and manage all the stimuli coming into their world is a hyperstimulus world. Things that we would just kind of tune out, they have difficulty tuning that out. And CBD can actually mute that stimuli. And when I say mute, it can turn it down. It's like the dial on a radio. You can turn up the volume, you can turn down the volume. You have another knob that tunes the station in. And well, some of you younger people probably don't know radios like that. It's all digital, but CBD can actually do both. It can tune in the station so that they can focus on listening to music versus white noise. And two, it can turn up or down the volume depending on what the needs are. And in most kids that are hyperactivity children or kids on the autism spectrum, they need to dial down some of that stimulus and turn things down. And the CBD can actually do that. It works directly on the nerve centers that are attributable to alertness, to sensory modulation, both visual sensation, tactile sensation, audible sensation, smells, etc. And it can just mute that so that the children can gradually start repairing and developing healthier neural pathways that help them manage better. And that's where I think this research is going, and that's where I think CBD is increasingly going to be more important. Now, when you think about supplement sizes, how much do you give? Again, that can be very, very tricky because some children can do very well with just a few drops. I mean, literally a few drops of like the Platinum 2000. That's all they need. They don't need a lot. Some children might take droppers full. And you just have to figure that out. There's a sweet spot for every individual. There's a sweet spot for me. I just put in new wood flooring in this room that I had, and I had this hammer nailer, and I was, hammering it to push in the pneumatic nailer to attach the wood floor to the subfloor. And I got almost like a tennis elbow. And so normally I just take one soft gel, which is the HydroPro soft gel, and then I take a half a dropper to a dropper of 2500, which is our full spectrum product. I'll take that at night, the capsule in the morning. Well, I put balm on, and I took 2 of the capsules yesterday afternoon and another 2 yesterday evening. And unless I lift up something really heavy, my arm is already better. And that's a form of tendonitis that often takes 3 to 4 weeks to heal. And I'm at probably 70% improvement in less than 24 hours. And how you do that is you've just got to find out what your sweet spot is. I know what my sweet spot is for inflammation. I know what my sweet spot is for maintenance. And the same thing goes for children on the spectrum, goes for you and I, everybody on this, is you will find your sweet spot. And once you find, you'll find 2 sweet spots. You'll find your maintenance, what you feel well on a daily basis. And then you'll also find your sweet spot. And that's what you take when things kind of go off the rails a little bit. You get out of balance. And that's really critical to take the time. take the time to find that sweet spot and just play around with it. You can't overdose on the product. It's literally impossible to overdose. You'd have to take, I calculated it out based on a study that they promoted in the United States that CBD is dangerous. Well, when you looked at the study, when you did the detail work and you looked at the study, you'd have to drink 496 1-ounce bottles of CBD in the span of a couple of hours in order to get toxic. Okay, I challenge anybody to drink 496 ounces of an oil. See how long you can sit there without having to run to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So you can play with the serving size to find your size. And the same thing goes with those children that you're talking about. CBD is not, Live Labs products are not necessarily recommended for children under the age of 18. Now that's a corporate policy. That's not a medical, there's not a medical study that shows that there is something magical about 18. My 2-month-old grandson has had CBD, well, since he was a little bit under 2 months of age, and every day since. And healthy as can be. He started out at 4 pounds and 13 ounces. And now he's this big tank. He's just grown demonstrably. And a lot of that is due to the CBD that he gets, because it's keeping his body balanced and regulated. And that's what's so important.
Helle, you are muted.
Good. So do you have any personal experiences about people having stress or PTSD or something like that and using the CBD? We have we have platinum here in Denmark, we have Hydro Pro, and we have the balm, and then we get the dirt.
Yeah, actually, there are lots of neat studies that are talking about PTSD and CBD. And ideally, full spectrum is best, because even that little bit of THC is helpful, because anytime you have the entourage effect where you have all the polyphenols and the terpenes and all the different CBDs, all those have an impact on the brain. Nature didn't add THC or take out CBD or take out this form of THC randomly. It just didn't do that. It gave us the full oil. Humans actually determined whether or not to take out a specific. Unfortunately, our political and our legal system lags behind our medical knowledge. So eventually, I'm hoping that Europe will open it up to a full spectrum. And the reason why I say that's important is because the PTSD studies that have been done in the United States look at full spectrum CBD oil with the trace amounts of THC. That doesn't mean that if you take the THC out, it's not going to have any effect on PTSD or depression, but it adds that little bit of extra help. So when you have PTSD or depression, the problem is the PTSD creates a neural pathway that gets constantly triggered. So your recollection of the event that caused that trauma builds a superhighway of neural connections, and that becomes a preferred route of information that gets back and forth. So certain things will trigger. You'll see something like it would be like you're driving by the highway and you see an on-ramp and you go, oh, on-ramp, superhighway, I can get somewhere fast. Boom, you get on it and it triggers it. And then you get on that loop. So what CBD does is CBD tries to break that association. It tries to break that looping that you get into that gives you your triggers for the PTSD and then keeps you in that PTS depressive mode. And what you want to try and do is you want to stop that cycle, you want to break that pathway, and you want to develop new neural pathways. And that can be done using higher than normal serving sizes of CBD. Although, again, certain people don't need very much and it helps them. And the CBD regulates some of the nerve transmission in that pathway. And gradually you build healthier pathways that mute some of that trauma, and the trauma becomes less and less important. And that superhighway becomes less and less enviable to get onto. And so now you're able to take side roads that bypass that superhighway and then bypass the depression, bypass the trauma, and it rebuilds those pathways. And it does it both nutritionally, it does it by muting some of the neurostimulation, and it does it by helping those glial cells support different pathways that are healthier. That makes sense?
Yes, for sure. So, and I've also heard a lot of people having a good results regarding pain. So what's going on there? It could be pain as with you, Andreas, your broken spine, but myself, I've played handball for many years, so I have my knees are not so good, but the pain went away getting the CBD. So what is your experience with pain and CBD?
Well, CBD supports natural repair of the body. And with regard to discomfort and pain, it works in a couple of different ways. First off, as I mentioned before, it can dial down some of the stimuli coming back to the brain. So your peripheral nervous system, it will send signals that the body's in pain. And those signals have to be interpreted in certain areas of the brain. So if you cut the connection, if you cut the nerve between the injury and the brain, you don't feel pain because that information isn't getting to an area of the brain that is able to interpret it as pain. So CBD can dial that down, can reduce that stimulus. So that's one way that it can work. Secondly, CBD acts as an anti-inflammatory. It's a potent anti-inflammatory, and it can break some of the cycles of the inflammatory chemicals that get released when an area is damaged. So if you have chronic inflammation to your knees and your knees hurt all the time, you can reduce that by taking a CBD product that helps to reduce the inflammatory process. And therefore, by reducing the inflammatory process, you're reducing the signals going to the brain. And then that just helps because if you have less signals and then you have a muting of the signals by the time it gets to the brain, you have a double benefit. The third way that CBD really helps pain is it acts as a cell signaling agent. And cells like to communicate, and they communicate either by photons, little packets of light, and light stimuli, and they just found this out within the last couple of years. They were able to tell that cells, actually, you probably all heard that we're light beings. We're beings made of light. Well, we really found a scientific proof of that because we now can see these tiny little flashes of light that can go between one cell and another. And they utilize, believe it or not, chlorophyll. You know, we used to hear that the difference between plants and animals was animals didn't have chlorophyll, plants had chlorophyll. Well, actually humans can utilize chlorophyll that you digest from plants to help make energy using light energy, etc. So the CBD, when it helps the cell signals, it can either enhance healthy signaling, which says, hey, we know that the cell is damaged. We're on top of it. We don't need any more of these. We don't need any more firemen, and we don't need any police forces coming in. We got things under control. So just turn around and go back to your station. Everything's under control. So the CBD can tell the other cells that everything is under control. It balances. If there is an acute injury, something that needs to be addressed, they can signal the other way and say, hey, send everybody. Send the fire department, send your mother, send the mailman, send everybody, because our cells are damaged and we need to repair, and we need all hands on deck. So the CBD, the endocannabinoid system, acts as that balancing. So if things are way out of whack, if you have a lot of inflammation, a lot of discomfort, it can do things in the body that brings that back to normal. If things are out of control and you need to be signaled that something's wrong, it can signal through hormones, cell signaling, a number of different pathways to send the repair mechanisms to heal the body. It's a fantastic system. It's just, the human body is so brilliant. It's so intelligent. It's so genius. The amount of biochemistry that's going on in the tip of my finger could fill libraries with medical books and still not describe every neural pathway, every biologic system, every mineral, enzyme, cofactor, catalyst that's going on in the tip of my finger. It's just amazing. It's fascinating, which is why I kind of geek out and love this stuff.
So is there any studies about degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or multiple sclerosis and the use of CBD?
Yeah, actually, those are, again, if you go on PubMed and you look at some of the informations, the studies that are out there, you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of studies where they've looked at the endocannabinoid system in Alzheimer's, the endocannabinoid system in MS. One of the things that we're finding is in Alzheimer's disease, a lot of it is determined by your gut bacteria. And again, like I mentioned earlier, CBD is very important. 2, it's a chronic inflammatory condition. It doesn't just start when the person has neurocognitive decline. It starts decades earlier. It starts as inflammation to the blood vessels supplying the areas in the brain. It starts with the brain not getting cleared out. Like if you don't get good sleep, if you only get 4 to 5 hours sleep a night and you don't get deep, healthy sleep, you're 3 to 4 times more at risk of getting Alzheimer's dementia than a person who sleeps well for 7 to 8 to 9 hours. And all that means is that when you're in deep sleep, your body, there's something called the glymphatic system. You've heard of lymphatic systems, which runs along with your arteries and veins. There's this other system that helps to clear your body of toxins. Well, the brain has its own lymphatic system, which is very similar. And that only activates when you're in deep sleep. Well, CBD enhances your ability to get into deep sleep. And when you get into deep sleep, those lymphatic channels open up, and the toxins that are produced by the neurocells during the day, when you're thinking, when you're working, when you're doing the activities of your day, those get cleared out of your system and it refreshes your brain, which is why you feel so good after a good night's sleep. You can think better, you can respond better, you're not cranky. Things are much more clear after a good night's sleep versus if you got, like today, I got 3 hours and almost 4 hours sleep. My wife had to have a procedure done at the hospital early this morning, so I didn't get much sleep. Well, I woke up and I was in such a brain fog. It was terrible. The CBD helped, but nonetheless, you don't clear the toxins, so you don't get clear. With Alzheimer's, that goes on for year after year after year after year, along with the vascular inflammation, which causes narrowing to the blood vessels, which causes decreased oxygenation and nutrification to the brain tissues. You get premature cell death. So the cells in the brain die and they can't be maintained as well by the glial cells. And again, CBD enhances glial function. It enhances that neural factor that helps keep the brain healthy. So all those things are cues that CBD can indirectly enhance. So in my mind, and no pun intended, My mind, I want CBD in my system for the rest of my life, because I know it's an anti-inflammatory. I know it's going to stimulate my nervous system properly. I know it's going to enhance the clearance, help my sleep. Those are all key things that help reduce your risk of Alzheimer's dementia. The other thing that it can do, which is, this is more cutting edge and there's much, much less data on this, but your genetics, there are certain genetic profiles that enhance or that give you an enhanced risk of Alzheimer's disease. If you have something called an ApoE4 gene, that can, if you're homozygous for it, meaning you have both of the genes, you are much greater risk of getting Alzheimer's dementia. Well, just because you have those genes doesn't mean that those genes have to be expressed. So by taking something like CBD, they're finding out that CBD helps to mute some of the damaging expressions of those genes. So that is very helpful. And MS is very similar. MS is something called demyelination of the long strip of cholesterol, fats that help to propagate electrical signals over long lengths of the nerve fibers. And so this myelin sheath is like an insulator, but it's got properties that enhances the speed that those nerves can fire. Well, something happens in the body, an autoimmune sensation, whether it's caused by a virus, whether it's caused by nutritional deficiencies, microbiome deficiencies, there's something that triggers the body to attack that myelin sheath, that insulation along the nerve bodies, and the nerve fibers. And when that myelin gets disrupted, the speed by which that nerve can conduct electricity goes down dramatically. Well, CBD can actually help the nutrients that are necessary to rebuild the myelin. And again, those little glial cells that I've been talking about, those are the repair and maintenance workers that help to rebuild that myelin. So if you can reduce the inflammation in the body by proper diet, by getting sleep, by doing meditation, by doing exercise, and you take particular supplements, primarily CBD, but also particular minerals, cholesterol that you find in eggs, choline, things of that sort, that can all rebuild that myelin sheath. And MS doesn't have to be a lifelong disability. There's a great physician, her name is Terry Waltz, and she has a really good book on MS and how she basically reversed her MS through aggressive lifestyle management. And it's quite amazing what the body can do if you just give it what it needs and it requires. And you stop beating up on it.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. We could keep on going whole night here. It's really amazing to hear. I think that we should probably hear if anyone has any questions to Dr. O'Connor.
I have a question, Helle.
Yes. Is it Sasha?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's Sasha.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Sasha. I have a boy with a ADHD, and Helle is currently helping me improve his how he's thriving and how he's doing. And it sounds like it's really fantastic, all the things you're talking about in CBD, and I can't keep wondering, if it's so fantastic and it works so well in the body, why isn't it more recognized in the world? I mean, why don't we hear more about it? And I mean, why don't we put it in the drinking water, for Christ's sake, if it's so fantastic? I mean, it almost sounds too fantastic if we don't know more. Why haven't we heard about it? Why isn't it more recognized in the world? I mean, I've the only information I've heard about it currently in Denmark is that it's a hoax. It works for some, but not really, and all the science is not good, and all that negative stuff. So it sounds too good to be true almost.
Well, I'm going to make you the ambassador of Denmark to CBD, and maybe you can talk some sense into politicians. But yeah, you strike on a real issue. And interestingly, from the time something gets leading edge research is found out to the time that it gets incorporated into the traditional medical system can be up to 2 to 3 decades. So there is a lag of 2 to 3 decades. And in the United States, because of the pharmaceutical industry bears a lot of power, financial power, political power in the United States. And physicians like me, who are progressive enough to look at some of these compounds and say, why aren't we using them? We are actually looked at like we're charlatans, that we're quacks, we're crazies, we're woo-woo kind of people. My partners, I had 9 partners in the emergency department. Not one of them supplements. Not one of them, despite years of me telling them, you know, hey, this CBD stuff is amazing. Not one of them took it. Not one. So I'm 10%, and probably the physicians who know anything about CBD in the United States is probably maybe 10, 15%. They may have heard about it, but people who really know about CBD are probably less than 2%. And it's been legal in the United States for 3 years. And we've got less than 2% penetration on the compounds. It's terrible. But there are a lot of factors that are involved, political, economic. A pharmaceutical company can't make money on CBD because the plant can't be patented. Epidiolex can, isolate can be, and there's a UK company that makes something called Epidiolex, which is a seizure medicine using a single form of CBD molecule. They actually can patent that because it's an isolate. I apologize, my grandfather clock is going off. But they can actually license that and sell that at a huge profit, when if those same parents gave their child a broad spectrum CBD, they wouldn't have to pay the hideous price for their Epidiolex, and they would probably get a much better result. But you're right, it's like folic acid. We found out that it was so good, but you know, it took, I think folic acid and neurotube information was found out in the 50s. So they knew about it in the 50s. It took until the 80s for it to be kind of commonly used. So that's our reality. But since you're the new ambassador, you can go out there and shake up some of those people in Europe.
I have another question. From what I've heard from the media in Denmark, they talk a lot about that the science with CBD is actually bad. That it's not, you know, randomized controlled trials. It's not the big studies. It's not. I mean, yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I haven't checked it. I haven't studied it or anything. That's just what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Well, there clearly, to some degree, that's true, meaning when I say that that's true, there are some studies that were not double-blinded, randomized controlled studies. But if I go outside every day and I see the sun come up from the east every day, do I need to do a randomized controlled double-blinded study to tell me that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? No. You can look for yourself. And to a certain degree, I get the idea that you want to have science backing it, and the science is catching up with the compound. there are increasingly more studies as it becomes more popular, and we are finding out that these products really do amazing things in the body. But the research is still fairly young because it was just legalized 3 years ago. So now there's this big impetus, not only by the companies that make CBD to involve themselves in controlled studies, but also we have PhD candidates and things like that that are looking for studies, and they're using CBD to control for certain things. And we have some progressive healthcare scientists that are also looking at CBD and trying to gain that information. But there are thousands of articles. Some of the studies are good, some of the studies are bad. It's like everything else. Interestingly, it was either Johns Hopkins or Harvard did a study, and they found that of the double-blinded controlled studies that mainstream media depends on, mainstream pharmacologics depend on, 90% were wrong. They were in error. So the things that they push in our face and say, hey, CBD is junk science. Okay, your double-blinded control studies, 90% of those can't be reproduced or were proved wrong. So, okay, I think tie game. And I'll take my empiric data from thousands of people that I've talked to that have had tremendous results. I'll take that any day over a scientific study that oftentimes is just junk in and of itself. So I go with what works. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a doctor to know that this product can be amazing. And one of the things, Sasha, too, is that there are 3 types of people, and some people get affected by the CBD very rapidly. And those are people that tend to be very deficient in CBD, but have plenty of other supporting nutrients to allow the CBD to function well. There are people that are in the middle. It takes a longer time for them to get a result because they're deficient in CBD, but they're also either deficient in some minerals, cofactors, nutrients, et cetera, or their lifestyle makes their improvements slow down, whether they're under a lot of stress and the CBD gets converted to cortisol instead of getting used in the system. Those are the sort of things. So those people take a little bit longer. And then they're the very late long bloomers. And the long bloomers, they're people that probably have very low amounts of the endocannabinoids circulating. They are at risk for high levels of stress. They have poor sleep habits, poor nutrition habits, or they're genetically deficient in the ability to process certain nutrients, certain minerals. And so it takes a long time for their system. You can drive the endocannabinoid system and you can drive it and you can get it really primed, but it can only do as much as the rest of the body. The path of least resistance, or the lowest common denominator, is always going to affect how that CBD works. And so the people that are fast responders, they have a path of least resistance. So once they fill up their endocannabinoids, they're better. Then those other people they just don't have that path, or they're missing some critical nutrient that doesn't allow their system to benefit from the CBD. So that's why it's very important not to just try it for a week and say, well, it didn't do anything for me. Try it for a couple months, 3 months, 6 months. In the process, also adapt your lifestyle. Take probiotics, take prebiotics, go out, exercise, get sleep, watch your diet, do an anti-inflammatory diet. Don't drink gluten, don't eat dairy foods unless they're fermented cheeses, And I know you guys love your cheeses in Europe, but if they're fermented, if they're hard cheeses and the good stuff, that's fine. But do some lifestyle changes, and you'll see a tremendous benefit of the CBD working hand in hand with lifestyle changes, which is where my focus of interest is and will be, is encompassing health. I'm just not pushing a CBD product and saying, hey, you don't have to do anything else, CBD is wonderful. If I did that, I wouldn't have any credibility, because it just doesn't work that way. But CBD is very essential if you want a health and wellness lifestyle that is going to serve your body well. But you have to do some other things. And dirt is one of those other things, because dirt will give you the cofactors, the 70 plus minerals that are charged ions, which are bioavailable, meaning that they're ready to go for the body. That's the thing. Folate and methylfolate and folic acid. Folic acid doesn't work in the human body. The body has to spend so much energy to convert that synthetic vitamin into something useful that it actually causes toxicity to the liver. If you take folate, which is the natural vitamin from green leafy plants, if you take folate, your body still has to expend some energy to methylate it so that it can be incorporated in your cells and function. If you take a supplement with methylfolate, then your body doesn't have to expend energy, because it's exactly what the body needs, exactly what the cell needs, and you'll feel the difference. So that's the same way with CBD.
Sasha, do you have any more questions, or could we go on?
No, you can go on. Except, what is dirt? I haven't heard that before.
No, it's a new product coming, but perhaps Dr. O'Connor could talk just a bit about it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just do a quick elevator speech on dirt. Dirt is a compound that's mined from several hundred feet below the ground, and it's plant material that's been digested by bacteria. So why that's important is when a biologic system digests plant materials, the nutrients in the plant, as well as the minerals in the plant, get turned from their organic form or inorganic form into an organic form. And that's just the way that the body needs them to be incorporated easily in the body. So dirt is actually, in a wide sense, is fermented plant material. And it's ground up, it's purified, and it's mixed with liquid. And you take it, and it's full of organic acids, which are very healthy for your body. And those organic acids transport minerals in and out of the cells. The organic acids also adjust the pH of the cells. They adjust the charge of the cells to keep them healthy. And they're just an amazing group of compounds, and they're loaded with essential minerals. And you don't need to take a lot of it to get a big benefit. The minerals are kind of recycled in the body, but once you start getting deficient, it's almost impossible to catch up without taking a product like dirt. And dirt works hand in hand with CBD. So it's a very exciting product that I can't wait for you guys to get. And I can come on another time and talk specifically about dirt and all the benefits, because it's pretty amazing stuff.
Sounds very good. Hannah, you got a question, I can see?
I do. It's super interesting. I'm very happy to hear all of this. And I have a daughter who has a gene mutation that makes their cerebellum shrink. And I did notice that you were saying something about that you can have a gene for something and it doesn't have to be triggered. And we do know that her gene gets triggered by stress. But can CBD do anything to anything like that? We've often talked about, can we make that gene sleep or something? What can we do and would that have an impact on an illness like that?
Yeah, I think it very well could, depending on what specifically is going on. But if, like you mentioned, it can be triggered by stress. Well, CBD can enhance a less stressful life. Now, if you attach that with meditation, if you attach that with a very pristine diet, that's going to help as well. You want to reduce inflammation, because inflammation is what, when stress hits, it sends inflammatory signals, which then corrupt the cerebellum. And the other thing where CBD is going to help is, again, I mentioned those glial cells several times. And those glial cells are little maintenance cells that keep all the larger neurons healthy, and they provide nutrition. So I think CBD for her, stress management, an anti-inflammatory diet, no gluten, no dairy products, doing a gut test, so that you can find out if she has any food sensitivities, or if she's deficient in certain good bacteria. That's going to be very helpful. And then the last thing is to just get good sleep, so that the nervous system is constantly supplied with energy instead of fatigue. I think that's going to help. But
Okay.
yes,
Thank you.
the
On
gene,
their alkaline water and their diet and all that. So I think CBD must be some of what is lacking. So thank you.
yes,
It's super
yes.
interesting. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Good.
Get well.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can see that Eva has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting speech. I definitely want to try the CBD for my restless legs. And I was just thinking, when you say a good long sleep, I need to pee many times, and I get up like 5 times a night. But anyway, I'll try the CBD. My question is that it's something that's naturally produced in the body, as far as I understand. So if you start to take it for years and years, will you then make the body's own productive system of that stuff? Will you make that lazy so that you can't make it yourself? And then you get used to that you have to have it from outside. You understand my question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. First off, I love the wood beam in your home. That's beautiful. I'm big into architecture, but yeah, absolutely.
200 years old house.
I'm jealous. I tried to make my floors look 200 years old. My dog is doing a good job of it anyway, but yes, actually, I'm a proponent of something called cycling. So you cycle, any supplement that you take, you should probably cycle. And that goes with CBD. I like a 5 and 2. So I like to cycle 5 days on, 2 days off. Or you could do 2 and 1. 2 days on, 1 day off. And that way you prevent something called downregulation of the receptors. Now, I'm saying that with experience, but not a lot of hard data to prove that. I don't think that there are any good studies out there that have clearly shown that if you took CBD every day, that your receptors would be downregulated. And the reason why is because plant CBDs work differently than your natural endocannabinoids. And how that makes a difference is there's a lock and a key. So the receptor sits on the cell, and our natural endocannabinoids sit and they go hand in hand. A plant endocannabinoid comes in and it just blocks part of the receptor. So the receptor is still may not necessarily know that it's being triggered. It is, but it may not know that. It may not send out a signal, a back channel signal that says, hey, I'm being overwhelmed. I don't need any more CBD, so I'm just going to crawl up and involute and use the protein somewhere else. So just by experience, although I can't say one way or the other, and I want you to know that right up front, I think that anything, it's always a good idea to cycle. Your body loves to be challenged. It's very good at adapting. So when you stress it, when you challenge it, it works better because it says, okay, I need to be stronger because I'm facing this adaptive stress. So the same thing goes with CBD. If you give CBD constantly, your body might get used to it. Again, I can't prove it yet. Maybe there'll be a good study that I can find that says I'm right or wrong, but I would just in general cycle it. And the good news is if you cycle it, you know that you're probably doing the right thing and you're also getting good value for your money. Your product's lasting a little bit longer. So those of you that are entrepreneurs or hempreneurs and money is I just kind of shot your profits by a little bit a month, but my credibility and my honesty is more important than the money. So sorry.
Thank you.
And even Debbie and David probably wouldn't mind me saying that. They'd probably shake their head, or Ralph would go, "You're killing me, Doc." So, but.
Sure. So Dr. O'Connor, could you just shortly tell about, I know also that you have tried other brands. So what is so unique about these products from Live Labs?
Okay, first off, I'm putting out a masterclass CBD certification course that's shortly going to be available to everybody to look at. So it will describe everything from the history of CBD to the genomics of CBD, the endocannabinoid system, how it works, all that sort of stuff. But to talk about this in particular, actually, I forgot the question. What was the question again?
What's the unique about Live Labs products? Yeah.
Okay. First and foremost, I was taking a product that many of you are familiar with, cannabis. And I was terrible. I took it for about 2 years. And I was terribly unimpressed. It didn't taste good. I really never noticed any benefits from it. And it just, and then the other part of it was the company, the mission of the company. I just never gelled with it. It just didn't sit in my gut, in my heart well. I got on a phone call with Debbie Reeder quite by chance, and it was an afternoon, and I had 12 different key things that I wanted to check off in a CBD company. One of them was purity. One of them was like, what was the company mission? Were they honest? Did they have integrity? Was it all vertical manufacturing, meaning that the company controlled everything from the seed to the manufacturing to the harvesting, et cetera? And the Debbie Reeder that autumn afternoon clicked off about 16 different things. So I immediately signed up. And this was before they even launched. So I had been with Live Labs before they even officially launched. And the products are triple purified. They're grown in areas in the United States. There have been a lot of fields, a lot of agricultural areas that have been sprayed with Roundup, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. There's a lot of land that's been dual use. They grow tobacco on it or grew tobacco, and tobacco leaves traces, fairly large traces of nicotinamides, which are basically insect toxins and neurotoxins. So I wanted a company that didn't grow their product in any of those areas. And Live Labs grows their product in pristine fields that have never been used by agricultural products. And they also have a buffer. They have a buffer around the farms so that you don't get spillover from other farmers that are growing soy or corn or something like that, that are spraying their crops with the pesticides, fungicides, etc. So it's very important that they're isolated to maintain their purity. And that's really important because hemp is a bioaccumulator. It's really good at taking nutrients out of the soil. But in addition to taking nutrients, it can pick up toxins. So it can concentrate the nicotinamides in fields that were previously used for tobacco growing. And trust me, this area of the country, tobacco is still grown all over the place. And the fields are just toxic waste dumps. We have a lot of dioxin, which is a carcinogen, because we have some sulfur burning coal plants. And that's an airborne particulate toxin, and it lands on the ground. Water will seep it into the area where the soil and the bedrock come together. And there's a layer where the plants will actually go down, they'll send a taproot, and then the taproot will lay flat, and it lays on the bedrock. Well, that's where the highest concentration of toxins are, because they've leached through, they've gone through the soil, but haven't percolated through the bedrock. And hemp is one of those plants that has a really deep taproot. So if you are growing your hemp in soil where it's close to the bedrock, it's going to sit and it's going to grow that taproot right in the highest concentration of toxic soil. So it's really important. The vast majority of companies, they don't care where their plants are grown. They'll just buy it on the secondary market because they can make a profit. They can buy stuff from all over. They don't care. Live Labs, they have their own farms. They have their own seeds. They have their own genetics. They have their own production. From harvest to production is less than 2 days. And that's important because not only do the hemp products biodegrade very rapidly right after harvest, they start to degrade. So you don't get as high of a potency of the CBD. So the quicker that you produce your product, the higher the concentrations and the higher the quality of the CBD goes. And secondly, mold. Mold can start developing very rapidly if you've harvested plants and you sit them in a warehouse and you don't process them. And molds are toxic to bacteria. And what's the energy system of your body? Mitochondria. Mitochondria are archaic blue-green bacteria that produce all the energy for all your cells. So people who are exposed to mold have brain fog, they have nutritional deficits, they have energy deficits. They can drink all the caffeine in the world, but they can't produce energy. And so molds are very, very toxic. And Live Labs has a certificate of analysis where they show 0 mold, 0 pesticides, 0 fungicides, 0 heavy metals, and they triple purify, which is critical. Most companies don't even purify their products once. Live Labs purifies them 3 times. That's to ensure that you have the highest quality oil. Each time you purify, you lose product, which makes it more expensive. But still, even though they do the triple purification, cost-wise, it's still very competitive with most other lesser oils, and certainly much cheaper than some of the premium oils that I've looked at. So those are just a few reasons.
Thanks, O'Connor. In the chat, we have a last question from Mia. She's on Iceland. She writes, could it repair a damaged thyroid that is damaged from chemo and radiation?
It can help because that's an inflammatory situation. The thyroid gets damaged by the chemo, you get something called apoptosis, which means cell death. The chemo goes in and tries to kill certain cells, but, excuse me, it's not perfect. It's going to kill good cells with it. And when the cells die, they create cell signals which trigger an inflammation reaction. So you get a chronic inflammation in the thyroid because all that tissue has been killed. The body's trying to get rid of it. The inflammation signals continue longer than the cleanup operation. So those cells may have all been cleaned out years ago, but it can trigger this chronic low-grade inflammation that keeps that thyroid acting poorly. So if you can interrupt that inflammation, you can actually speed the healing and get back to a balance. Now, it doesn't have the same hormone effect as like T3, T4. It won't affect some of those thyroid hormones, not directly, but it can also be used to make thyroid. So CBD can actually be a building block to some of those other hormones. So if your body is deficient in the building blocks, it can actually use CBD to manufacture other hormones, which is pretty interesting and pretty fun.
Thank you. I had, what was the last thing? Yeah, I would just mention the unique about this product also is that it actually tastes good. As you said, the other brands, the brand I've tasted doesn't, if we are in that high percentage of CBD in the product, it tastes like tobacco or something, but this is good. This is really good. But I could imagine that some sensitive children who also have difficulties eating different things, that they might not want to take it. So what to do then?
Well, my 2-month-old grandson and my other 2 grandchildren that live locally, I have 6 grandchildren, and 3 live with my son and daughter-in-law in Boston. He's a major in the Air Force. He's a dental officer. And the Air Force, like a lot of corporations, is a little bit behind the times, and they will not allow CBD to be utilized. You can be court-martialed if you're found positive. So 3 of my grandchildren can't take CBD. 3 of my grandchildren can. And when we come out with the 2500, it actually tastes much better than the HydroPro. The HydroPro is really unique because it absorbs very rapidly and it's a small molecule, but it doesn't taste as good because of the surfactants that keep those molecules very tiny. But the 2500 is a traditional oil. And those, my grandchildren, they're like baby birds. You come out with a dropper and they're like, they love it. So the platinum, I would say if you're having trouble, find something that the child likes to eat, like applesauce or yogurt, and just mix it in a teaspoon of some other food source. And maybe that covers up the taste quite a bit. And again, kids with special needs sometimes have really unique sensory hang-ups, like they don't like soft, or they don't like chewy, or they don't, they have their particular likes and dislikes. So find out what they like, put it in there, mix it up, and then they'll never know.
Okay. So is it possible, if it's not possible to get it oral, to put it on the skin or something?
Yeah, you could do that, but it's going to be a little bit less. It doesn't absorb systemically as well in high enough concentrations. It's important to get the blood levels of the cannabinoids to a certain point. Once they get above a certain point, then they can really start doing their work. And unfortunately, when you absorb it, like the balm is really good because you can use it on your tennis elbow. It's a local, regional effect, and it doesn't absorb in any huge way in the blood system, or at least not rapidly where you see a spike. You really want to get a spike if they have a systemic problem like ADHD, or their autism spectrum, or inflammatory situations, etc. That's going to be more important to get something oral. So I would really push for oral route as best as possible. I mean, you could do it rectally, but they don't want it orally. They're not going to want it that way.
No. Well, thanks a lot. I could continue listening to you. I think it's amazing about the CBD. I really appreciate that you took your time to come and tell us about it, and I sure hope that I can borrow you once more later. So if any of you that have been listening or will be listening in the future, if you're interested in trying the CBD, you can just mail me. You have my email. That's why you are here. So thanks a lot Dr. O'Connor. It was a pleasure. And thanks, Christina and Andreas, for telling your story. So let's end it.
Thank you, Heather, for doing this.
Thank you much. Yeah.
It's a great honor. I really appreciate that, and I hope I added value to your evening.
Oh, you did. Eva, did you have something to say? I could see your hand raised.
It was a clapping hand.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Sleep well.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.